You don't decide to become a villain. You just decide, once, to stop pretending you aren't one. Everything before that moment is just backstory. Everything after is consequence. Level 1, the extra. You die in the first act. That's your whole arc. You're standing at a checkpoint, or leaning against a wall in a warehouse, or driving the third car in a convoy, and then the hero arrives and you're done. You don't have a name. You have a number. Henchman 3, Guard 2, Thug in background. You've been hired to look menacing and to fall convincingly. That's the whole job description. But here's what nobody tells you about being the bottom rung. You see everything. The hierarchy is completely visible from the floor. You see which lieutenants are cruel for pleasure and which ones are cruel because it's efficient. You see where the money actually goes. You see the boss's face when things go wrong. The real face, not the one he shows to people with options. You're invisible, which means you're everywhere. You're a piece of furniture in every important room. You survive your first 6 months because you're good at being forgettable. You don't volunteer, don't complain, don't ask questions about the things that would be dangerous to know. You show up on time. You do what you're told. You go home. The pay is poor, and the job security is worse. 2 men you trained with are dead before winter. You tell yourself you're different from them. You're smarter. You're paying attention. You're learning the architecture of a world most people don't know exists. That is the lie that keeps everyone on the bottom rung moving forward. Everyone down here believes they're just passing through. Level 2, the Henchman. Now you have a name. That sounds like a small thing. It isn't. When the lieutenant calls your name, other people look to see who's being summoned. That's attention. Attention is proximity to power, and proximity to power is the only currency that matters here. You run errands at first. Messages delivered, packages moved, problems relocated. You don't know what most of the packages contain. That's intentional. Knowledge is distributed on a need-to-know basis, and right now, you don't need to know anything except how to follow instructions without improvising. Improvisation gets people killed. You've seen it. A man makes a decision that wasn't sanctioned, and 3 days later, he's a problem that also needs to be relocated. You get your first real assignment 4 months in. You're told to convince a shop owner that his rent is due. No specifics on what convincing looks like. That ambiguity is also intentional. You understand, on the drive over, that this is the test, not the task, the decision about how to complete the task. You think about it for the entire drive. You knock on the door. You deliver the message. The shop owner pays. You drove there a henchman. You drive back something slightly different. What's changed isn't your circumstances. It's the ceiling of what you're willing to do. You raised it. Ceilings, you're learning, only go one direction. Level 3, the Enforcer. Fear is a language. You've become fluent in it. Not the crude grammar of raised fists and broken furniture. Anyone can speak that dialect. You've learned the advanced form. A look, a pause, the particular quality of silence that makes the air in a room change. You walk into a space and the conversations shift. People recalculate. People remember that they owe someone something, or promised something, or said something they shouldn't have. Your presence is a tax that everyone in the room has already paid before you open your mouth. You don't enjoy this. That's what you tell yourself. But you notice that you've stopped going to places where no one knows you, where you're anonymous, where you're nobody. You used to love those places, the freedom of being unseen. Now the unseeing feels like erasure. This is the addiction nobody warns you about, not the violence, not the money, but the weight of being known, of existing so specifically in someone else's mind that they organize their day around your mood. You have a reputation now. It precedes you into rooms. It's not entirely accurate. Reputation never is, but it's useful, and useful is what you are. At this level, being useful and being dangerous are the same thing. You carry both like a coat you can't remember deciding to put on. Level 4, the Corrupt Official. You wear a suit now. Real fabric, good cut. The transformation surprises people who knew you before, but it shouldn't. The suit isn't a costume. It's a translation. Everything you learned at the street level, leverage, hierarchy, the architecture of fear, Translates perfectly into rooms with mahogany tables and institutional lighting. The only difference is the paperwork. The paperwork legitimizes everything. You have a title now, depending on the operation: a procurement director, a city contracts officer, a deputy commissioner. The title grants access. Access grants influence. Influence is what you've been climbing toward since you were invisible in that first warehouse. You're not invisible anymore. You're protected. Immunity is the most expensive thing in the world, and you've purchased it in installments, one signed document at a time, one facilitated contract, one permit expedited for a grateful developer who asks no questions about why you're the person expediting it. The people you work with now don't think of themselves as criminals. That's the thing about institutional corruption that nobody who hasn't lived inside it can understand. There are no villains in this world. There are just people who understand how the system actually works, as opposed to how it's supposed to work. They sleep fine. The framework that makes what they do invisible to themselves is reinforced by everyone around them. You start to sleep fine too. That's the most dangerous transition of all, not the first crime, but the first night after the 100th crime, when you realize you're not losing sleep over it. Level 5, the true believer. At some point, you couldn't say exactly when, you acquired a philosophy, a reason. The ruthless efficiency of pure self-interest starts to feel hollow, and so the mind, being what it is, builds a structure around it. A justification with columns and load-bearing walls. You're not doing this for yourself. You're doing this because the alternative is worse. Because someone has to. Because the weak have always been protected by the willingness of the strong to do the things the weak won't do, can't do, refuse to acknowledge even need to be done. You start to resent the people who benefit from your choices while pretending your choices don't exist. The clean-handed, the comfortable. The ones who live inside the order that violence maintains and never ask how the order is maintained. You've been in the rooms where the maintenance happens. You've paid the price of that knowledge. They haven't. And they look at you like you're the problem. This is the most seductive level and the most dangerous one, because the belief is partially true. That's what makes it so hard to quarantine. The world is genuinely unfair. Power does genuinely flow to those willing to use it. The strong do determine the conditions under which the weak live. All of that is real. The lie is the part where that truth becomes permission, where the accuracy of your analysis of the world becomes a license to do whatever you've decided is necessary. That step, from observation to authorization, is so small it barely feels like a step. You take it anyway. You already have. Level 6, the Nemesis. You've met him now. The hero. Whatever word applies to the person standing between you and the thing you're building. And you've noticed something that you cannot fully explain and cannot let go of. You're not that different. The same city made you both. The same losses, the same institutions, the same understanding that the world will not give you what you need. You have to take it. The divergence is not in the origin. It's in the conclusion you drew from the origin. He decided the system was worth saving. You decided to burn it down and build something better. You're both, in the final analysis, people who decided to act rather than accept. The difference is almost aesthetic. The hero doesn't see it that way, of course. He needs a clean line between himself and you. The cleaner, the better. It lets him hit harder. You understand this. You respect it even. A hero who doubts is a hero who hesitates. You've given him no reason to hesitate. You've been generous with your villainy. You've made it easy to hate you. And while he's pointing at your worst moments, he isn't asking certain questions about his best ones. That's the gift you give him, the moral clarity of a clean enemy. You almost wish someone could give it to you. Level 7, the architect. Everyone thinks you're improvising. That's the best part. They see the chaos, the scrambling, the reversals, the apparent setbacks, and they read it as disorder. What they're actually reading is depth. The plan has layers that you installed before any of this started. You've been playing at a distance from the table that no one in the room knows is possible. The hero thinks he's unraveling something. He is. He's unraveling exactly what you left for him to unravel. Every breadcrumb, every revealed henchman, every thwarted scheme is a corridor you built that leads to the room you actually need him in. Control is not the ability to prevent things from happening. Control is the ability to determine what happens next, regardless of what just happened. You've had that for years. Nobody noticed because you were too busy appearing to be someone improvising. There are people, allies, enemies, instruments, who don't know they're in your plan. Some of them have given their lives for causes they believed were their own. You feel something about that. You've stopped examining the something too closely. Examination at this level is a luxury you can't afford. Architects don't live in their buildings. They just make sure the structure holds. Level 8. The monologue. You get one. Everyone gets one. Eventually. The hero is in the room, restrained, cornered, or simply waiting, because both of you know the next move is already set and neither of you can stop it now. And you talk. You've earned this. 30 years of calculation and cruelty and patient accumulation, all of it building to this quiet room and the particular freedom of being finally, completely, fully understood. Or so you tell yourself. But something happens while you're talking that you didn't plan for. You're listening to yourself. And the version of yourself you're describing, clear-eyed, principled, forged by necessity, sounds in this room, in this light, with this particular witness, like something you've rehearsed so many times you've mistaken the rehearsal for the original. The origin story you've been telling yourself is true in its facts and a fabrication in its meaning. The injury was real. The conclusion was chosen. Somewhere between the wound and the plan, you chose this. Every single step. The hero says nothing. He doesn't have to. His silence sits in the room like a verdict. You finish anyway. You always finish. You always. Level 9. The ghost in the mirror. The plan executed. Fully or partially, in whole or in pieces. The great work you built is somewhere in the world now, doing what you designed it to do. And you're still here. That was the part you never fully planned. The after. Villains in stories end at the climax. They don't plan for Tuesday morning. They don't plan for the particular silence of a room without an opponent in it. The entire architecture of your identity was built in opposition to something. Now the opposition is resolved, and you're just a person in a room. You stand at a window and watch a city that doesn't know your name. Or a city that does. Both feel, this morning, about the same. The things you lost to get here are so far behind you, they feel like they happened to someone else. Because in every way that matters, they did. The person who was hurt, who was overlooked, who decided enough, who drew the line that became the philosophy that became the plan. That person doesn't exist anymore. You used him up building this. He was the fuel. You're the destination. You don't feel what you expected to feel. Nobody ever does, at any level of anything. That's the secret the whole story was never going to tell you. The feeling you were chasing was never at the destination. It was in the chasing. Somewhere, a child is watching a screen. There's a character on it. Cold, brilliant, a little misunderstood, doing terrible things with perfect certainty. The child is leaning forward without realizing it. The child is thinking, I understand them. I don't think they're entirely wrong. The child will forget this moment. The moment will not forget the child. You were that child once. You know exactly what comes next. The cycle begins.